Okay, so welcome everyone to chapter 3 of our project management course. So today we're going to be diving into a very crucial part of project management, which is scope management. So this chapter will give you the foundational knowledge that you need to effectively plan and execute successful projects. Before we begin, let's look at what we'll be covering in this chapter. So by the time we finish, you should have a solid understanding of how scope management contributes to project success. We'll explore the crucial first stage of conceptual development, learn how to develop the comprehensive scope statements, and talk about the elements of work authorization. So we'll also cover some aspects such as scope reporting, control systems, and a proper project closeout. So let's begin by understanding why scope management is important. Okay, so think of scope management as the backbone of the project. It's what holds everything together and gives your project its structure. So without proper scope management, even the most promising projects can quickly become off track. What do we mean by off track? We mean behind schedule, over cost, or not good quality. So let's define what we mean by project scope. So the project scope is everything that goes into your project and everything that comes out of it. So it includes all of the work that you'll need to do, all of the resources that you'll need to use, and all of the end products that you plan to deliver. It's not just a list, okay? It's more than that. It includes the quality standards, also the project goals, and any constraints or any limitations that you need to work around, okay? So think of this as your project's DNA, okay? So it defines everything that makes this specific project or your project unique, and it determines what success looks like. So scope management isn't just one task. So it's going to be a series of interconnected processes that help control the project من البداية للنهاية. So from start to finish, okay? It starts with conceptual development. This is where you shape the initial ideas that you have. And then from there, you move into creating your scope statement. This becomes your project roadmap. And then it comes, or next comes the work authorization, so number 3. And this is where you get the formal approval to proceed with the project. And then throughout the project, you'll be engaging in something called scope reporting, and this is mainly to track the progress. And then you can use control systems to make sure that you stay on course. And then finally, you complete a proper project closeout. Okay, so each of these steps, اللي هي steps 1 through 6, each of these steps work together to keep the project on track and moving towards success. So these are the steps in project scope management, okay? Think of this diagram as the roadmap that we're going to be using throughout these slides or throughout this lecture. So we're going to be talking about each one of these different steps in project scope management. So the first one is conceptual development. So just to give you a high-level idea of this one, this is where we take the project from just an idea to a plan. We identify the problem, we gather the requirements, we also collect the information, and we analyze the alternatives, okay? So this is basically like laying the foundation for everything that follows, okay? So هنا الأساسيات كلها راح تكون. The second one is the scope statement. And so here we create the documentation of what the project will deliver. We establish goal criteria, management plans, and create something called the work breakdown structure. And so the work breakdown structure or the scope statement, this becomes our roadmap for the entire project. The third one here is work authorization. So this is the formal authorization that we can go ahead and start working on the project. We're going to talk about something called contractual requirements and establishing clear terms. So هنا basically ناخذ الضوء الأخضر or the green light to start moving forward with the project. Next is scope reporting. So هنا this will be regular updates on the project status. This includes things like cost status, where are we on the schedule, and how are we on technical performance. And so we can think of these as like the vital signs that we are using to monitor the project. Okay. Next is going to be control systems. So these are systems that we're going to put in place to monitor and manage changes. This includes things like configuration control, design control, and trend monitoring. And this helps keeps the project on track and managing any necessary changes. The last thing is the project closeout, and this is where we end the project, so the formal ending of the project. This includes documentations, developing any lessons learned, and any final financial accounting. So this just makes sure that we capture all the valuable insights for future projects. Okay, so let's start with the first step, which is conceptual development. So remember, we're going to be using the roadmap from the previous slide to talk about each of these steps. So starting with conceptual development. So this is the starting point of any successful project, okay? So this is where we transform the idea into something that is actionable, okay? So يكون عندنا هي كفكرة كيف نحولها من فكرة إلى something that we can actually do, okay? So for example, think of this as taking a sketch and turning it into a detailed blueprint, okay? So during this phase, we're focused on finding the best ways to meet the project objectives. We will identify problems, we will gather requirements, we'll collect information, we'll look at all of the different constraints, and we'll analyze the different alternatives, okay? So each one of these steps brings us closer to a more clear and a more actionable plan. So what does it take to make conceptual development successful in project management, okay? So there are four essential requirements that we need to keep in mind. The first one is we need to reduce the overall project complexity. This means breaking down complicated aspects of the project into simpler, more manageable pieces, okay? Think of this as like taking a large puzzle and organizing the pieces into smaller, more logical groups before you start putting it together, okay? The second requirement is that we must ensure that the goals and objectives are clearly stated. So there's no room for anything vague or ambiguous here. Everyone involved in the projects need to understand exactly what we're trying to achieve, okay? So this is like having a clear destination before you start the journey. You need to know where you're going to plan how to get there, okay? The third one is that we need to provide reference points. These are things like benchmarks throughout the project that helps us measure the progress and maintain the direction. And then finally, and maybe one of the most important requirements is that we need a complete understanding of the project that we're trying to solve. So this means looking at the issue, understanding the root causes, and knowing exactly what success should look like, okay? So without this understanding, we might end up solving the wrong problem or implementing an incomplete solution or implementing a solution to a completely different problem, okay? So when all of these four elements come together, we create a solid foundation for successful project development. The foundation of project or scope management starts with a clear problem statement, okay? We're not just identifying what's wrong, we're understanding why we need a solution in the first place. So when we develop the problem statement, we're answering some fundamental questions. First is, why is there a need in search of a solution, okay? Why are we searching for a solution? Next is, what's the underlying problem? Okay, what do we intend to accomplish with this project? So answering these questions gives us a well-crafted problem statement that becomes the guide basically for all future project decisions. So requirements gathering is the next step, and this is where, or during this phase, we are listening carefully to the stakeholders, and we're documenting everything that they need and that they expect from the project. Okay, so we're looking at things like the product-related requirements, We are looking at what features they want to see. We are noting any quality requirements, so what standards they expect us to meet. And then we're also documenting performance requirements, how well everything needs to work, okay? So in this phase, we're just capturing exactly what the stakeholders tell us that they need. We're not interpreting anything here, okay? So next is information gathering, okay? So here we're trying to collect all the data that we might need for the project success. So we're conducting brainstorming sessions to generate ideas. We are running focus groups to understand user needs. We're sending out questionnaires and surveys to gather some feedback. And we are conducting interviews to get some detailed insights, okay? So think of this as building the project's knowledge base. Here you need to be very detailed and very thorough. So the more thorough that you are now, the less surprises that you will face later on in the project. So let's quickly talk about constraints. So these are the boundaries within, or the boundaries that we need to work within, okay? So every project has constraints, and we need to identify them early in the project management step, okay? So think of these as things like time constraints. These might affect our schedule, budget constraints that limit our resources, and client demands that shape the deliverables, okay? Understanding these constraints early in the project management phase helps us develop some plans and helps us avoid promising that we can deliver something that we really cannot. Alternative analysis is where we think of all of the possible solutions to the same problem, okay? So for every problem, usually there's not only one solution, there could be multiple solutions. Each solution is going to be an alternative, okay? So instead of just jumping at the first solution that comes to our mind when we think about the problem, we take a step back and we consider all of the different approaches that we can use to solve the same problem. So to do this, we need to understand the nature of the problem statement, and then we need to work on generating alternative solutions. So sometimes when we do this process, this leads us to finding some innovative and more interesting approaches that we might have missed if we just rushed to the first solution that came into mind, okay? So alternative analysis isn't just about finding a solution, it's about finding the best solution for our specific situation. So after we're done with the alternative analysis, so after we've analyzed all of our alternatives, we get to the project objectives, okay? So this is where the conceptual development becomes one clear statement of what we aim to achieve. We're not just listing the goals here, we are creating a full picture, or a comprehensive picture that includes the outputs, the resources that we need, and any timing requirements, okay? So if you've done the steps from the previous slides, if you do those correctly, then these objectives should flow naturally from the analysis, okay? So the business case is where we make our pitch for project approval. So this is about telling the story of why the project matters, okay? So we need to clearly demonstrate the business needs. We need to show that the project is feasible before we ask for any funding or any investments. We're also looking at both the monetary and any non-monetary costs, and we're providing realistic time estimates for the investment, okay? Most importantly, we're highlighting what happens if we don't do the project. So what are the risks of not doing any actions? And that can be the most important part of our case. The statement of work, or the SOW, typically it's called the SOW. So this is our detailed narrative of what needs to be done, okay? So think of this as the project's instruction manual. It starts with an introduction and some background that sets the context. Then it moves into a technical description that outlines what we're planning to do or what we're planning to build or implement. It also includes a timeline that has key milestones. So the SOW is about setting clear expectations with our clients about the deliverables, about the timeframes, and about quality standards. A well-crafted SOW includes three essential elements, okay? First, we need an introduction and background that provides a brief history of the organization and explains why we need this project. Second is the technical description that clearly analyzes the project's capabilities and any challenges, okay? Third is our timeline and milestones. So this is where we discuss when key deliverables are due and what outcomes we expect to achieve. So this is a template for the SOW, and you can see that it's designed to capture all of the critical elements of a project proposal. So this includes the project description, deliverables, resource requirements, risks, expected outcomes, estimated time and cost constraints, and any issues. So using a template like this just ensures that we don't miss any of the crucial aspects of project planning, and it helps us provide a structured way to document everything that we need to know, and just helps develop a well-written or well-developed SOW. After completing the SOW, many organizations establish something called a project charter. Okay, so this is a formal document that's issued by the project sponsor that officially allows the project to exist and authorizes the project manager to begin using organizational resources. So this part only comes after the project sponsors have done their homework. So they need to verify three key things or three key items here. One, that there's a solid business case. Two, that all of the project elements are understood. And three, that the company-specific information has been properly applied to the project. So if you go back to the roadmap that I talked about in some of the previous slides that had all of the steps of the scope management, remember that the first step was conceptual development. Okay, so there are two main outputs of conceptual development: the SOW or the statement of work, and the project charter. Okay, there are several key benefits that come from developing a comprehensive project scope analysis. So one, this process helps transform ideas into working concepts. Two, it allows us to map out the specific project details and three, ensures that everything aligns with the original goals and objectives. So most importantly, by carefully outlining each of these steps, we significantly increase the probability or the likelihood of staying within our budget and time constraints while meeting all of our quality parameters. Again, taking us back to the roadmap, the first step was conceptual development. So we're done with that. So now let's focus on scope management, scope statement. So this document reflects the project team's best efforts at creating the documentation and approval for all of the important project parameters before we move into the development. Okay. Okay, so let's walk through the scope statement process, okay? So this process follows four essential steps. Think of this as like starting with planning and ending with the execution. So it's like a journey from planning to execution. So first step is that we establish the project goal criteria. This is where we define several crucial elements: the cost parameters, the schedule that we need to follow, any performance standards that we must meet, the key deliverables, and the review and approval gates that help us maintain quality control throughout the project. The second step is where we develop the management plan for the project. So this isn't just the documentation, but it's about setting up the framework for how we'll actually run the project. Okay, so this plan outlines how the team will operate, what procedures will follow, and how we'll handle the management of our project activities. So the third step is establishing the work breakdown structure, or the WBS. So this is breaking down the large project into some smaller, more manageable pieces. The WBS helps us organize the project into some logical components, which makes it easier to assign the responsibilities and track progress. And then finally, we create a scope baseline. So this becomes like a reference point or a standard, which will measure all of the future progress and changes against. It provides a summary description of each of the project components. It includes the basic budget and schedule information. So each one of these steps builds upon the previous one, which creates a comprehensive approach to managing the project's scope, okay? Following this systematic process helps ensure that nothing falls through the cracks and that we have a solid foundation for project execution. So let's look at the WBS, or the work breakdown structure. The WBS is one of the most powerful project management tools out there. According to the project management body of knowledge, they define a work breakdown structure as a hierarchical decomposition of the total scope of work to be carried out by the project team to accomplish the project objectives and create the project deliverables. Okay, in simpler terms, we can define the WBS as a process that helps us break down the project scope into smaller, more manageable pieces arranged in a way that makes logical sense. The WBS helps echo the project objectives, offers a logical structure, establishes a method of control, communicates the project status, improves communication, and it demonstrates control structure. So let's look at a real world example here. Okay, so here we have a flow chart for an IT installation project. Okay, so all of these tasks are broad tasks. Okay, so for example, identifying user needs. This specific task could be divided, or could be decomposed into three subtasks: interviewing potential users, developing the presentation of IT benefits, and gaining user buy-in to the proposed system. Okay, so using the same IT example, let's look at how we can organize everything hierarchically, okay? So at the top level here, at level 1.0, we have the overall project, okay? Below that, we have the major deliverables like 1.2, 1.3, and so on. So from that previous slide, remember where we said that the specific task could have three subtasks. This is where the main task would be in this level, basically. Okay, we can then break each one of these down into more specific components, such as 1.21, 1.22, and 1.3. So these would be like the three subtasks that I've identified in the previous slide. Okay, so each level gives us more detail about what needs to be done. Okay, the lowest level in the WBS is called the work package, the work packages. Okay, and these are the individual activities that must be done by the different resources in the project. So again, just to explain further the decomposition, or the levels in the WBS, at the very top here we have level 1.0. Okay, so this is the entire project that is under development. Okay, below that we have, or we can break down the project into what we call deliverables, which are shown here in the yellow. Okay, so 1.2 and 1.3 and 1.4, these are the major project components, or the major project deliverables. Moving down another level, we have our sub-deliverables, and these are in blue. Okay, these support the main deliverables. And then finally, in the green, we have the work packages, and these are the individual activities that make up the project foundation. Okay, so depending on which level you want to go down to, the lowest level has to be the individual project tasks that need to be completed by the project resources in order to meet the project goal. So in some of the examples, like the previous one, you saw that we only went down to 3 levels. And so the third level was the work packages. But in this case, when we went even further, one level further down, you see that the lowest level is going to be the work packages. So what exactly is a work package? Okay. Think of this as the building block of our project. So these are the WBS elements that we can assign to specific resources for them to complete. What makes the work packages special is that they are the smallest component of the WBS. So each one has a clear beginning and end date or a duration. They have assigned costs, and they require specific resources. So again, going back to the same example that we were looking at, which was the IT installation project, looking at this table here, you can see how we have broken down the full IT installation project into different or into multiple deliverables. Okay, so deliverable 1, deliverable 2, deliverable 3, and so on. Each deliverable has its own work packages. So for example, under deliverable 2, identify user needs, we have specific tasks or work packages like WP1, interviewing potential users, WP2, developing IT developing presentation of IT benefits, and WP3, which is gaining user buy-in. Okay, so I want you to look at how each of these elements or each of these components has a unique code that makes it easy to track and reference. So for example, going back to our deliverable 2, it has a code of 1.2, and you can see that it's unique. So no other deliverable has the same code. And then the work packages under that deliverable are also unique, and they follow the code of the deliverable itself. So هنا مثلا كان 1.1, so this is going to be 1.1.1 and 1.1.2, and then deliverable 2 is 1.2, so the work packages are going to be 1.2.1, 1.2.2, and 1.2.3, and so on. So let's understand the hierarchical decomposition of the WBS. Okay, so we have 4 different levels. Level 1, so sometimes it's 4 levels, sometimes it's 3 levels, but the main idea is the same. Level 1 is the highest level, and it represents the overall project that is under development. Okay, level 2 contains the deliverables or the major project components. Level 3 is our sub-deliverables. These support the main deliverables. And then level 4, or the lowest level, and these are the work packages or the individual project activities that make the project happen, or that make everything happen. So let's look at the characteristics of the work package, okay? So we can think of the work packages as manageable pieces of a larger puzzle. Okay, that's number 1. The second one is that they create a chronological roadmap that shows us exactly what needs to be done at each stage and when. Okay, the third one is that each package comes with its own deadline, resource requirements, and who's going to be supervising the task, basically. Or they can be broken down further into subtasks for individual resources or groups to work on them. And then finally, when all of these packages work together, they guide the project team from the start of the project to successful completion of the project. This is an example of how we can implement a work breakdown structure in Microsoft Project 2016, and this is something that we work on in the lab. So again, in this example, you can see how this software, the whole project, Microsoft Project, helps us organize the IT installation project into a clear hierarchical structure. Okay, so I want you to look at how these tasks or subtasks are indented to show the different levels. So our main project or our main IT installation project is at the top here, followed by the major tasks like match IT to organizational tasks or identify user needs. And then further indented is going to be the work packages that we've identified. So for example, interview potential users or develop presentation of IT benefits. And then this just shows you another view of the same project. Again, we talk more about this in the lab, but in this specific view, we see the tasks. On the left, we see the tasks, and then on the right here, we see the timeline view that shows us the dates, and it shows us the duration of each of the tasks. So I won't go into a lot of detail about this since we talk more about this in the lab. One of the major benefits of creating a comprehensive WBS or work breakdown structure is how it helps us organize the work into something called cost control accounts. Okay, so we can think of cost control accounts as a financial monitoring station for specific parts of the project. So let me explain how it works, okay? So when we create our WBS and we assign the different pieces of work or the different tasks or the different work packages to the departments in our organization, we come up with something called the organization breakdown structure or the WBS. So when we do that, we need a way to track the cost that's associated with each piece or each work package, okay? That's where the cost control accounts come in. So let me give you an example. So if you have a department that's responsible for software development in an IT project, then their cost control account would track four things. The budget that's allocated for their specific work package, the actual cost that they are incurring, the earned value of the work completed, and any variances between the planned spending and the actual spending. So the organization breakdown structure serves several key purposes. So first thing, it helps us define the work clearly. Second, it assigns the owners to specific work packages. Third, it allocates the budgets to the departments, and most importantly, number four, it creates a clear link between the activities, and the responsibilities. Okay, so this is not so the WBS was showing us what needs to be done, but with the organization breakdown structure, it shows us who's responsible for doing that. So remember, the WBS breaks down what needs to be done, so all of the deliverables and the work packages that make up the project, okay? It's like a detailed task list of everything that needs to be accomplished. So that's the WBS. The OBS, or the organization breakdown structure, shows who will do the work, okay? So it's the organizational structure that outlines all of the departments and the people that are involved in our project. Okay, when we combine these two structures, we create an intersection point where the work packages meet the responsible departments. So this intersection is where we establish the cost control accounts. So let's look at our example here. We have the WBS, as you can see here, and we have the work packages for deliverable 1.4, which are 1.41, 1.42, and 1.43, okay? Here in our OBS, sorry, we have the three different departments that are responsible for the tasks or the work packages in deliverable 1.4. So we have the information systems department, who are responsible for working on the search committee task. They are responsible for developing criteria task, and they are also responsible for the select consultant task. Okay, the human resources department are going to be responsible for parts of the search committee task, as well as the develop criteria task, and then the procurement department are going to be responsible for parts of the develop criteria task. Okay, so you can see that for some work packages, for example, develop criteria, that there are multiple departments that are all responsible for the task. But each one of them has its own cost account. Okay? Um, and then for other work packages, like this one, for example, the select consultant, only one department is involved in that. So using the WBS and the OBS, we can go ahead and develop the responsibility assignment matrix, or the RAM, okay? This is a tool for identifying exactly who will be responsible for each task in the project development. This isn't about the departments, this is about the people, okay? So the RAM, or the responsibility assignment matrix, is typically developed alongside the work breakdown structure to make sure that we have a perfect alignment. What makes the RAM valuable is that it doesn't just show who's in charge of each task, but it shows the entire support network, okay? So it tells us who needs to be kept in the loop, who needs to provide the support, and who needs to give the final approval for each work package. So let's look at an example. So here's an example of what a responsibility assignment matrix, or a RAM, looks like, okay? So looking at this matrix, you can see how we map the different roles across this top here. So from IT to HR to procurement to engineering and to legal, okay? And we can map them to the specific project tasks on the left here. We have the deliverables and then we have the tasks. Okay, the symbols tell us exactly what each person's role is. So circles here show us who's responsible. The stars here show us who needs to be, sorry, the stars shows us or who provides the support. The squares shows us who needs to be notified, and the empty squares indicate who needs to give approval. Okay, so this creates a clear communication structure that prevents the tasks from falling through the cracks and ensures that everyone knows their role. Okay, so for example, let's look at how the task problem analysis, how it is, or who does what, okay? So we have multiple team members that are involved in different ways, okay? Each with their own clear responsibility level, okay? For example, here we know that Bob from IT is responsible for this task. David from IT has to be notified of this task. James in engineering supports Bob from IT in completing this task. And then Terry from legal gives us the approval. Okay. So notice how each task has to have someone who's responsible for doing the task. So each row must have a circle, okay? But that's basically it. The rest doesn't have to be there. So for example, in this case, in the interview potential users, we don't have to notify anyone, okay? In other cases, like this one, for example, develop info on IT technology, we don't have to get the approval from anyone, okay? Okay, so let's look at where we are in the project development process. Okay, going back to our roadmap. So we've looked at conceptual development, we talked about scope statement, and now we're going to be talking about work authorization. Okay, so I want you just to notice how each one of these phases builds upon the previous one, which creates a comprehensive approach to project management. Okay, so this work authorization phase that we're going to be talking now is highlighted in yellow, and so the next few slides will be talking about that. So work authorization represents the formal go-ahead to begin the project work. Okay, so this is like the green light that lets your project team start implementing all of the project planning that you've done. Okay, this isn't just a casual approval, it's a structured process that follows several steps. These include the scope definition. The scope definition outlines what needs to be done. It also shows the planning documents. So the planning documents show us how it will be done. We have the management plans, which define who will do it, and our contractual documents, which establish the formal agreements needed to proceed. So when we look at contracts, we find that they typically contain three essential elements. First, we have the requirements, and these are exactly what needs to be delivered. Second, we have the valid consideration, which establishes what each party in the contract is going to be bringing to the table. And then third, we have the contracted terms, and these are the set of rules of engagement. Okay. Looking at the types of contracts, we have two types, okay? And these are two main approaches that are on the opposite end of each other. So on the first side, we have something called the lump sum contract, or sometimes they are also called the turnkey contracts. So in this type of arrangement, the project organization takes on the complete responsibility for developing the project at an agreed upon fixed price. So for example, if I was building a house, I hire a contractor or مقاول, and we have a contract in between us that says that he will build the house for me for $300,000. No matter what happens, no matter any surprises that come up, that's the price that I'm going to be paying. So that's the lump sum, okay? On the other hand, we have something called a cost plus contract, okay? And these are different because they fix the company's profit in advance rather than the total price, okay? So here's how they work. You pay for all of the actual costs of the project plus an agreed upon profit margin. Okay, so let me give you an example that you can work with. Okay, imagine you're developing a new software system. With the lump sum contract, you might agree to deliver the complete system for $500,000, for example. Okay, if it costs more than that to develop, then that's your problem. Okay, if you find any efficiencies and it costs you less, then you keep the savings. With a cost plus contract, you might agree to be paid for all development costs plus a 15% project margin. Okay, so if, for example, the costs reach 600,000, then the client has to pay you 600,000 plus 15% to cover the profit margin. Okay, the choice between these two contracts often depends on how well you've defined the project requirements and how much risk each party is willing to take. Okay, so going back to our project scope management roadmap, we've talked about conceptual development, the scope statement, the work authorization, and now we are going to be talking about scope reporting. Okay, so when we talk about scope reporting, we're discussing the systematic way that we keep everyone informed about the project's progress, okay? It's not about collecting the information, but it's about interpreting that information and determining what information needs to be shared, who needs to see it, when they need to see it, and how we're going to get that information to them. Okay, so let's break the three main types of status reports that we typically use. So the first one is the cost status reports, okay? So this keeps track of how we're doing with our budget. And these can be in several forms or several ways to show them, okay? We have the S-curves, which are the visual representation that shows us how the cost, including labor hours and other expenses, so how those costs track against our project schedule, okay? So this is like a graph that shows the relationship between the time and the money spent. So next we have the earned value reporting, which is really interesting because it tells us about both the cost performance and the time performance. Okay, so it shows us the budgeted value of the work that we've actually completed, regardless of what we've spent. Next, we also have the variance or the exception reports, and these are like the early warning systems, okay? So they tell us when we're slipping away from the planned target in terms of time, performance, and cost, okay? Next, we have second, we have the scheduled status reports. So these are straightforward but very, very important. So they tell us whether we're on track with our timeline. They help us identify if we are meeting our milestones and if we are meeting the deadlines as we planned. So the third one here we have is the technical performance status reports, and these focus on the technical challenges that we've encountered and how we are solving them. Okay, so all of these reports are essential to make sure that we're meeting all of the technical specifications and the requirements. Okay, and they work together to give the stakeholders a complete picture of the project's health. Okay. So they check the cost, the schedule, and the technical performance to ensure that the project is running smoothly. Okay, so again, going back to the key steps in the project scope management, which is the roadmap for today's lecture, we've talked about conceptual development, the scope statement, work authorization, scope reporting, and now we're going to be talking about control systems. So control systems are very, very important to make sure that any changes to the project baseline are done in a systematic and thorough manner, okay? And there are 6 different project control systems that we can use, which are shown in this diagram right here. Okay, so first we have configuration control. Okay, so think of this as like a project GPS. It constantly monitors whether you're still going towards your original destination or not. Okay, are you following your initial goals? Or is your project drifting off into a different area as the different circumstances change? Okay. Second, there's the design control. Okay. So the company Chrysler gives us a great example of this. So they created something called the platform design teams that brings together experts from the different departments like the engineering, production, and marketing. And rather than waiting until later in the process to discover the problems, they could identify the issues immediately. Okay, it's like so design control is like having all of your experts in one room, giving you real-time feedback. The third one is trend monitoring, and this is like a dashboard that shows you if your costs, the schedules, and the resource usage are changing or are deviating from what you planned. Okay, so it helps you spot problems before they become a huge problem. So it helps us identify the problems earlier. The fourth one here is the document control, and so this makes sure that any important paperwork, especially any legal or any contractual documents, gets to the right people at the right time. Okay, for example, if a building committee makes important decisions, these need to be properly documented and shared with all of the relevant parties. Fifth, we have acquisition control, and so this monitors how we obtain the equipment, the materials, the services that are needed for the project, and so it's like having a procurement tracking system. Okay. Sixth, we have the specification control, and so this ensures that the project specifications are clear, properly communicated, and only changed through the proper channels. Okay. So a crucial point about implementing these controls, okay? It's all about balance, okay? You want enough control to manage the project effectively, but not so much that you are required to have a lot of paperwork, okay? Okay, so now let's talk about the last step in our roadmap here to project scope management, which is the project closeout. In project management, the project is not over until all of the paperwork is done, okay, is completed, okay, and there's a very, very good reason for this. So think of the project closeout documentation as serving 3 very important purposes, okay? So first, it helps us resolve disputes. Whenever questions come up later about what was done and why, and typically they often do, having detailed documentation can save you from a lot of disagreements and even legal issues. The second is that the documentation is an invaluable training tool for future project managers. Okay, so every project teaches us something new. okay? Every project has lessons learned. And documenting these lessons learned means that we're not forcing the new managers to learn everything the hard way. So they can benefit from the experiences, both the successful and the failures, both the successes and the failures of previous projects, okay? Third, it facilitates the auditing, so it makes auditing possible, whether it's internal auditing to improve processes and to improve processes, or external audits for compliance, for example. So having the proper closeout documentations make these necessary reviews go much, much smoother. So what exactly goes into the project closeout documentation? So there are three main components. So first, we have the historical records. And these are, or these tell the story of what happened, when it happened, and why specific decisions were made, okay? Second is the post-project analysis, and this is where we dive deeper into what worked, what didn't, what we could do better next time. It's like doing a debrief, basically. Okay, and then finally we have the complete or we do the financial closeout. Okay, and this is where we make sure that all the numbers add up, all the bills are paid, and all of the financial obligations are probably closed out. Okay, so it's like balancing a checkbook, but on a much, much larger scale. So let me wrap up everything that we've covered in this chapter about scope management, okay? So basically, I'm going to give you the main ideas that we talked about in this lecture, okay? We started with conceptual development, and this is where we transformed the ideas into plans, okay? Then we moved to creating detailed scope statements that outline exactly what needs to be done. From there, we developed the work breakdown structure, where we break the large projects into manageable pieces, and our organizational breakdown structure, where we assign the responsibilities to the specific teams and projects. We learned about work authorization, which gives us the formal go-ahead to begin the work, and we explored the different types of contracts اللي هي كانت lump sum والcost plus, and those help us manage the risks and the expectations, okay? We discussed the importance of control systems that keep our project on track. And then finally, we covered project closeout, ensuring that we deliver or we document everything properly for future reference. Okay, so think of the full process of scope management like building a house. Okay, you first have to have the blueprints, which is the conceptual development. You need to have the permits, which is the work authorization. You need to have the proper construction techniques, which is the WBS and the OBS. You have to have regular inspections, which is the control systems, and you have to have the final documentation for the house, which is the project closeout. Okay, if you skip any of these steps, your house or your project in larger terms could potentially fail or will probably fail. Okay, so I want you to remember that effective scope management isn't just about controlling what goes into the project. It's about ensuring that everything that we do aligns with the original goals and objectives of the project, okay, while being flexible enough to adapt to any necessary changes, okay? So when done right, this is what turns a project from being a dream into a reality.